Scorched Earth has been out for nearly 8 months now, and we are finally diving into this forsaken desert wasteland. I'll be spending 100 days under the sun, building a whole western mining compound, and hopefully taking down the fearsome Manticore. So without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So begins my journey on Scorched Earth. It's a land of beauty, danger, and, well, death. Lots of death. I spawned into South Zone 3, and immediately I was welcomed by a mod who was drawing a saber tooth conveniently over to me. I'd love to say I took it on like a hero, but instead I did what any sensible person would do. I ran like a coward. Oh, no! No! No, not like this! Not like this! Not like this! Yes, that high-pitched, ear-piercing scream is me running like an absolute coward from this saber tooth. I would get away from it temporarily before it would eventually track me down. However, it apparently just wanted nothing to do with me and kept running past me. But just as I escaped the saber tooth, I then found a flock of terror birds. Because why die by one saber tooth when you can be gangbanged by an entire flock of evil chickens? And so I was torn apart both physically and emotionally. So I respawned at South Zone 1 and did what any survivor would do. I started picking bushes and punching trees with my bare hands to gather resources such as stone, fiber, thatch, wood, and a dream of a better life. With those materials, I would go ahead and make a pickaxe and hatchet. Of course, next up was a slingshot, and for this, I would be needing hide. And what's better for hide than killing innocent creatures that don't fight back? With my new slingshot, I found a furry little friend to join me in this hellhole. But before I could even put berries in this jerboa's inventory, a beautiful red and black raptor showed up to have it as a snack. As the raptor tore into my new friend, I was left with nothing but the sounds of the raptor laughing at me in the distance. Undeterred, I put some distance between myself and the raptor and crafted up my first set of cloth armor. Then I reskinned it with the western skin so I could feel like a true cowboy. Before I could even think about making any more progress, the first real challenge of our playthrough arrived, a sandstorm. The wind howled, my stamina drained faster than my will to live, and the sun sucked all of the moisture out of my body. And at this point, I had no way of protecting myself. All I could do was harvest cactus sap and slurp it down in hopes of just surviving. Which somehow I did, but then the desert heat decided it was its turn to try to kill me. I was now suffering from heat stroke and literally being cooked alive. I tried to run, but my health bar just kept dropping. But then a miracle happened. I found a family of jerboa who would give me just enough hide to craft my first sleeping bag. This way I could at least respawn back at this godforsaken location. But just as I finished crafting it, the temperatures cooled off and we lived to see another day. I wandered aimlessly, still suffering from the effects of the heat, when I would come across another jerboa. This time I knocked it out, tamed it, and named it Bowie. You know, because I lack creativity. From now on, he's gonna warn us of any future weather events. But knowing they're coming doesn't do much good if you can't survive them, so I bullet a nearby moth, killed it for its silk, and used that to craft up a tent. And as the first day was turning to night, I managed to find a nice little spot on some elevated ground that seemed to be at least a little bit safe. This would make the perfect spot for getting our first little starter hut down. Even better, this spot came with its own pre-trapped morellotops, just waiting to be tamed. This is how all good survival stories start, by taking advantage of a helpless creature.
Why you bullying me?
I continued pelting the poor creature with stone after stone when the horns blared and the cavalry arrived. Whoa, baby! In a moment of desperation and panic, I dove off the cliff, nearly killing myself, regained my composure as I quickly dropped down a sleeping bag before swerving through the skeleton of something much bigger and scaling up a small cliff face. The morellotops, realizing it had no chance of catching me, went on about its day in frustration. So day 2, I returned to check on our friend, the morellotops. However, instead of a friendly reunion, I found an army of morellotops had come to his aid. At this point, taming him wasn't gonna happen. Moving on, I found a raptor who was honestly just out here trying to eat some rocks. I began knocking it out, but my slingshot was doing too much damage, so I resorted to properly fisting the raptor. Just as I was about to knock it out, a morellotops wandered into the line of fire and caught a left to the chin. After losing the morellotops, I chased down the raptor, landed an absolute beauty of a bola on it, and then proceeded to kill it with my fist, which would have been cool if I wasn't trying to knock it out. Back at our base camp, I decided it was time to make a fire, and then I upgraded our tiny little shack to something more western, because nothing says I'm a capable survivor like a fake wooden building skin. Going back outside, I found that there were now 2 morellotops trapped, so I pulled out my freshly crafted boomerang and began chucking it at their faces. Eventually, one of them went down, and then after initially feeding it berries, I started gathering cactus sap, which basically allows you to instant tame a morellotops. While gathering that sap, I stumbled across a 145 Ankylosaurus baby baby, which meant the parent was also a 145. This was a massive find on day 2. Back on our Morellatops, I noticed I would need a lot more hide for crafting the saddle, which meant it was time to go back out, killing more fluffy creatures. Before long, I saddled it up, got it unstuck, and went straight to gathering berries for taming that Anki. And just as I went to go tame the Anki, I found a level 150 Doid as well. My luck in this playthrough was starting to really come together on day 2. But of course, it was first time to tame the Ankylosaurus. I mean, they are my favorite dinosaur after all. And of course, I also went ahead, after knocking it out, built a wall around it to keep it safe from some nearby raptors. While waiting on the Anki to tame, I found that pack of raptors and thought maybe I could tame them. That was until my boomerang decided to get stuck in the ground. And then bad went to worse as the raptors pinned my Morellatops into a corner and filled their bellies with its meat. Luckily though, I was able to scamper away to safety. Of course, I was not about to take this laying on my back with my feet in the air. I tracked down one of those lizards, hit it with a bola, and smacked it to sleep. Then, as the desert night began to grow colder, I found a baby jerboa, which would give me some delicious prime meat for taming our raptor, and I would do just that from the edge of my cozy little tent. With my new raptors saddled up, I set out on a noble quest to replace the Morellatops that was still digesting in our new raptor's stomach. I found a level 50 and figured if I could lure it into this giant skeleton, it would get stuck and we would have another easy tame. However, it refused and I was left to chase it across the desert before eventually knocking it out. Again, using cactus sap, we quickly tamed it up, and then back at base, we named our raptor Velocity and our Morellatops Coconut. Returning to the Anki, I found it being stalked by a raptor. I prepared to tame it when suddenly it attacked a nearby Doid. This, however, was a stroke of luck as an entire pack of raptors would soon race across my view, and I was left just picturing what would have happened if I was on the ground. Eventually, I lured them over to a small cliff where the raptors couldn't reach me and began knocking the whole lot of them out. That was until suddenly one of them did reach me. I jumped backwards out of my chair and Velocity jumped right into action. Luckily, I was able to corral her before she got herself killed. So I continued flexing my boomerang throwing skills until one of the raptors went down, and then I chased the original raptor we saw by the Anki, which was a 145, until I found it stuck in a wall where I would easily knock it out as well. A few more baby jerboas, and I was taming our 2 new raptors. Of course, I had to test out our new raptor pack, and they did not disappoint, mowing down a nearby Morellatops. And we all know this feeling the first time when you're not on the receiving end of Ark's brutality and you feel like you're finally making some progress. Day 4 began with me and the Rat Pack out on a mission to gather as much meat as possible for later spoiling, because nothing makes a 2x2 hut feel like home quite like the smell of rotting flesh. Then, as we mindlessly slaughtered all life in the desert, I noticed that our Ankylosaurus had finished taming. I decided to claim the baby as well for some backup, but before I could even get it back to our hut, a pack of raptors jumped us and went full Anakin on this youngling. So with meat in hand, I turned to our friend Coconut to help with gathering narcoberries, and before long, I had enough to make a small fortune of sleepy time drugs. So I crafted up some mortar and pestles, grabbed a nearby explorer note, and began mass producing drugs like my name's Walter White.
Someone cooked here.
Not only would I use these for taming, but they were also a great way to get some early levels. And with that level increase, I was able to get down our first forge. So with that, it was time to head out on a little journey to find some crystal and metal. Now you might be asking, what about the Doid? I'm not sure where it went or if it died, but it simply was not around my base anymore. But back to the journey at hand, I thought this would be a good time to craft one of our mods for this playthrough. Now normally I'm not a huge mod guy, but this backpack not only fits the theme, it also gives us a slight weight reduction on anything we're carrying, and that's perfect for our current task. So with my new backpack strapped up, I began filling it up with metal. Then I continued my search for crystal. However, I don't know if they've changed the spawns or if I'm just suffering from brain rot, but I could not find crystal anywhere. So I eventually headed home for the night, and before going to bed, we named our Ankylosaurus Blizzard. As I was heading back out for another crystal search, I was greeted by a level 150 raptor, and of course I had to knock this thing out, and before long, our pack had its newest member. Back on our search for crystal, I'd come to realize at this point that I am in fact the problem when it comes to finding the spot. Apparently, my wife has been right all along. However, my search was not completely useless, as this blue ring drop would have a nice little treat in it, some Journeyman desert goggles, which honestly is not too bad of a find on day 5. And if a blue drop had those, then surely this purple drop will be packed with goodies. Ah yes, you gotta love Ark's loot tables sometimes. Next was a yellow drop, which had a Journeyman Thylasaddle. At this point, I had fallen into the ever dangerous trap of an Ark loot run. I am supposed to be out here gathering crystal, but I would again give up my search for crystal and instead head for a spot that I knew had plenty of metal, so I would be able to gather enough to make metal tools later on. I ran into a pack of dirty pegos. They were no problem for my raptors, of course, but the real danger lurked in the background, a group of ceratosaurus. Fun fact for the day, they're actually my favorite carnivore. As I was attempting to make my way around them and through a pack of carnos, they would suddenly jump me from behind. Luckily, and to my surprise, honestly, my raptors were up for the fight and handled them with relative ease. So with a rock elemental nearby, I started carefully gathering metal, and on our way out, another rock elemental gave us a little bit of a jump scare before sailing a boulder slightly over our head. Back at base, I began emptying out my raptors and found that at some point one of them had looted a metal hatchet, and then I got my smithy down and crafted up some remaining metal tools, a crossbow, pick, and a shovel, which will prove to be super useful throughout this playthrough. At this point, Chad had come up with some names for two of our raptors, Wasabi and Peanut. And then just outside my base, I found another high-level raptor, and now equipped with trank arrows, I figured at this point, the more the merrier. And while waiting on that one to tame, we named our fourth raptor Nimbus. Next on the agenda was to upgrade the remaining gear to desert gear. This way we can at least check off heat as one thing that might not kill us moving forward. Then later in the day, I headed out, this time in search of an Argentavis. Now, not having a spyglass meant I had to get up close and personal to even check levels. I would find a level 135, however, she was having a little trouble being that she was, inside of a rock and all. After searching most of the day, I returned to find that she had worked out her issues. I began luring her down to a safer spot for trapping, when of course I would bring her straight to a Cerato. It wasn't looking good, so I decided to get involved, and honestly, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Early in the next morning, I got her trapped in a Captain Fat Dog special, and of course, as always, I will leave a link to his video for this trap. Please do me a favor and check that out. But then before I could even feed her, a raptor decided to come along and have itself a snack, because of course, why would Ark let me have anything nice? I did manage to kill it off just in time, however, this meant I would have to let the Argent wake back up before taming. So taking no more chances, I built her a nice little wall. While waiting for that, I grabbed another drop, this one with a very nice upgrade to our crossbow, which I would use to start knocking things out, starting with this level 150 Doit. I then took a moment out of my busy schedule to name our newest raptor Periwinkle before finding a level 150 Thorny Dragon as well, and of course, we had to knock that out. Much of the next morning was spent just tending to these upcoming tames until eventually the Argentavis had woken back up. Unfortunately, like most women in my life, she was looking pretty disappointed, ashamed, and unsatisfied from our previous night together. So to solve this, I killed a few jug bugs and dragged them over to feed and heal her up. And luckily, she was starving and tamed up instantly. And with that, we had flight. So first things first, I followed a treasure map I had found previously and dug up a little treasure. Then we named our Argent Harisvalger, which I probably just butchered, but it is what it is. And now, finally, we could go get that crystal we've been itching for. But now I was addicted. I needed more. So I went back to base to saddle up our Anki so we could start gathering in bulk. Later that day, I noticed the Thorny Dragon had finished taming and scooped it up, got my hands dirty making some clay for the saddle, and we now have ourselves a wood gatherer. It's not as good as some of the options on other maps, but it's the best that we can get. So now that we've started rounding up all of our initial tames, it was time to move to our final base location. It's a long journey though, so the only logical option is to craft some cryopods, which meant taking out some mantis for their polymer. As we returned home, I found the Doit had finished taming, and then it was time to craft cryos and start cryoing our tames. You might notice I'm using a cryo mod for this playthrough. That's because the new cryopod restrictions are dumb. That is all. We were all ready to go, but first I decided to name our Doit, and we went with Brutus. Go Buckeyes. And then it was time to say farewell to our little starter spot, now empty with no evidence we were ever here. Of course, Ark couldn't let me show up to my new base spot without ruining the moment. As I arrived to our potentially new home, the place was covered in clouds. Eventually they cleared away, and this is where we will be setting up for good. This large elevated spot is tucked in the mountains behind Blue Obelisk. The land is pretty flat for building, and there are a ton of high value resources nearby. Speaking of building, it has fun little spots like this that I could try to connect with a bridge and build something on top of it. Or there's this space over here that's kind of like multi-layered, has a lot of different stuff going on that I could do some pretty cool building with. And so I spent the remainder of the day just getting moved in. This would continue into the next day as I cleared out the land and continued standing up our 100 days pad before hitting up some nearby loot drops for some pretty good loot. I promise I'm not going to show you every single drop I retrieved. Things were coming together at base, but we still needed some levels to make future upgrades. So I grabbed a few explorer notes with our Argent and began killing off everything I could find. That is, until I ran into something that I don't think I'll ever be able to fight. Holy crap. What is going on right now? What the heck? Look at all of them. Look at it. Look at it. Are y'all seeing this? There's like 7 death worms right here. Bro, no way. Oh my gosh. Do I look like a small petite blonde girl? If you know, you know. You get the joke, you get the joke. And if you get the joke, then I need to question your search history. On the way home, I stopped to suck the bum of this jug bug for its tasty oil. And with that, we were able to get a fabricator crafted up and down. I still had a lot of XP boost to burn off, but my Argent was still pretty sore from its last video shoot. So instead, I decided to start crafting up a bunch more narcotics to help pump our levels. I spent the better part of this day just hitting drops. The first one came with every ARK player's favorite creature, the Microraptor. I'm not sure if it just lost interest in me or what, but after knocking me off, it just kind of chilled out and left me alone. If I'm being honest, I was hoping one of these drops would have something like an industrial forge or a chem bench because, well, to be honest, I'm just a cheap bastard and don't want to have to craft one. Unfortunately, I found none, but I did find a very nice pike BP, which will be definitely needed later on. So to end the night, I started prepping for eventually needing to craft that stuff myself by gathering and cooking a ton of metal. Day 12 would see me crafting a bunch of tents. Yes, that's right. Just let me explain. I wanted to get a wyvern egg as early as possible, and I wanted to make it fun. So my plan was to do this with an army of moths. Tents make moth taming very easy, as you can just basically place the tent right on top of the moth, trapping it. And before long, I had 3 moths down and out. Then on my way to grab 2 yellow ring drops, I noticed a 4th moth worth taming as well. So I hurried up and trapped it, went and grabbed those drops, and then returned to knock it out. On my way back to base, I decided to check in on our other moths, and it's a good thing I did because a Megatherium was lurking about. If you don't know, they sort of hate bugs, and last time I checked, moths were bugs. Now, I'm not actually sure if they aggro to moths or not, but I wasn't going to take any chances. The next day, I stopped at another drop. I know, but look what was inside of this one. Oh, baby, baby, baby. Hold on. Oh, baby. Oh, baby, look at that. There it is. 654% damage chainsaw. Oh, with 1,000 durability. Oh, and I got the oil to go with it and a windmill. Oh my gosh. Dude, that chainsaw is insane. Watch this. We're gonna find a tree. Of course, I had to immediately test it out, and yeah, the thorny dragon is basically useless now. Then, as I was peacefully sorting through my new loot, an Argent very rudely attacked our base. After a few expertly placed shots and not one single miss, I took it out and it was back to base upgrades, getting our wind turbine down to provide power for the base. Now, if I was gonna raise a wyvern this early, I wouldn't be getting milk, which meant I needed another solution. So first, I built a little drop trap at our base, went out and scooped up a nice level Daedon, and drug it back to base as it chewed away on our Argent's feet. Once we have this thing tamed up, we can just let it constantly heal our baby wyvern as it starts losing health. Now, our thorny dragon may be useless, but it still deserves a name, so we named it Buzzsaw. Then it was time to go fetch our first 3 moths who had finished taming. Upon returning to base, I would find that the Daedon had finished taming as well, but I got a little distracted looking at the beauty of ARK. Talk all the crap you want about the game, but it does look really good. Of course, cooked meat is better for Daedon, so I would need to craft a grill. However, I was short on oil. I figured maybe I would craft an oil pump, but of course, I was short on pearls for making the electronics. So I stopped over at a nearby river and slapped at the water with my whip for pearls. Crafted up the electronics, and just like that, we now have an oil pump. All that was left now was to fly over to the northeast side of the map to place it down, and then on the way home, I scooped up our 4th moth. It was now time to steal us a wyvern egg. But first, I wanted to breed the moths just in case we lose them all in the process. So here we go. 1 brain-dead survivor and his 4 flying cotton balls with dreams of becoming the next Khaleesi. Well, this poison wyvern quickly put those dreams to rest, swooping in to chase us off the hunt and eventually killing one of our moths. Luckily, that one moth left a bad taste in its mouth and it would leave us alone. Eventually, I set my sights on a fire wyvern egg, swooping in to grab it when suddenly a wyvern appeared below me. I quickly pulled back up, but it was too late. The wyvern was all over my other 2 moths. With them pulling aggro, I decided it was now or never and headed back in. Oh, we're out of stamina. Oh no, what a freaking mess. Oh my gosh. We're gonna land in the lava too. Oh my, what a freaking joke. I didn't even pay attention. I was not paying attention to stamina at all. Oh my gosh. All right, we're gonna be okay. It'll land out of the lava. Stamina regen. I flew up to the egg when suddenly my other 2 moths would reappear. I'm not sure what happened between them and the wyvern, but somehow here they are and the wyvern is no longer chasing them. However, the egg was a low level and I decided to continue my search instead. Unfortunately for me though, much like in my marriage, I don't make the decisions around here, as a fire wyvern showed up to remind me of just that. Oh, I'm dead. I didn't even take anything. I actually did a pretty good job of avoiding it on our moth until his poor little wings could flap no more. We ran out of stamina, and our moth, now on fire, ran out of the will to live. I dashed off the moth, wyvern still in my tail, ducking between rocks until eventually I was met with the same fate. So now back at base, it was time to regroup. I spotted a high-level tapejara nearby, and after hitting it with a bola, I built a little makeshift trap around it and knocked it out. Then just down the hill from us, I spotted a max-level Argentavis, but because I am habitually lazy, I decided not to build a trap and instead tried just shooting it on foot. Obviously, it would eventually fly away until I put a 10 out of 10 Halo 3 montage-worthy shot on it, and it conveniently landed on a cliff out of harm's way. Just down from that, I spotted another high-level one and again decided to be lazy. This time though, as it ran away, it passed out over a valley, but somehow landed perfectly on a large rock. Just as I thought it might be safe, a Cerrado entered the frame. I probably could have stopped him, but honestly, if one Cerrado could reach the Argent, then another would come along eventually and do the same. So instead, I just observed and let nature take its course. Now waiting on our two tames to starve out, I did a quick little meta run before returning to our tapejara to find it in the ground. Yep, that thing is properly in the ground. Well, the Argent at least was ready to feed, so nope, it's in the ground as well. Love this game. It's been a rough 2 days here on the Ark, and honestly, I just needed to take out some anger. So I crafted up one of our pikes and beat the beak off of a random Argent, who, because I decided not to check the level, of course, ended up being a 140, which just makes it all just so much more sad. But as luck would have it, the following day I would find another level 150. This time I was going to trap it, or at least I thought I was, until it lost aggro and flew straight down into its eventual death from a Cerrado. At this point, I honestly do just feel like crying. So with taming any flyers being an absolute disaster right now, I crafted up some billboards for a new plan. I headed out in search of a kangaroo and eventually would find one in desperate need of a rescue. And by rescue, I mean trapping in my base with billboards. You see, 2 of my moths are still floating about above the wyvern trench, so my new plan is to park my rune nearby, steal an egg, and then ditch the moths while I get away on the kangaroo. Surely this plan will work like a charm. Just as I knocked out the kangaroo, another Argent invaded my base. It was a level 100, which is obviously not perfect, but at this point I just wanted to back up. So I got it trapped and knocked out, grinded up a baby Cerrado for prime meat, and we got it taming. Then arriving back home from another loot run, I found the kangaroo had finished taming as well, and just as the night was ending, we were attacked by another Argent. Turns out though, he was just delivering us an ascended map, but the map will have to wait. First, it was time to try for another wyvern egg, and luckily my moths were still safe over here. I headed in for a lightning egg, but it was only a level 20, so we passed on that one. Another lightning egg, and this one was a level 90. It's not perfect, but it will work as a starter egg. Hands shaking, I grabbed the egg and dashed out slowly towards the roo, but in the most anticlimactic moment of our entire playthrough, I turned to find that apparently these wyverns just could not care less. And with an egg now safely at base, I headed out to do a meat run, and while out, I stopped by to dig up our treasure. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Give me something good. Okay, an Ascendant Fabricated Sniper, BP. That's not terrible. Very few bullets. And a 630% Ascendant Long Neck Rifle. Oh my goodness. That's pretty good. I'll take that. I then headed over to grab some oil out of our pump, and we had just enough to get the grill crafted and some meat cooking up for our Daedon. All that was left now was just to make our torch-powered hatchery. And so we started incubating our egg, which my PC was not at all impressed with, as all these torches were sending it into overdrive. But with the wyvern egg now incubating, I started doing some gathering as I wanted to get to work on our first build soon. And before long, the egg had hatched, and we now had ourselves a little baby wyvern. I then took a moment to name our second Argentavis Avocado, and then it was back to gathering materials for the build. With resources piling up, it's time to introduce one of our mods for this playthrough. This is the visual storage mod. It's basically dedicated storage for your different resources, and then there are drop boxes which allow you to quickly transfer materials to those storage buildings. Resource gathering would continue into day 19 until it was time to start crafting, and I of course would grab an explorer note before getting started with some focal chili we found in a drop, speeding up our crafting speed. But I drastically miscalculated how much clay and therefore sap I would need, so we did some more gathering before getting back to crafting. The next day, while waiting on some more clay to craft up to finish our building pieces, I spent this time getting a few things done. First, I went ahead and dyed my cowboy getup to be something a little more fitting of myself, and then I decided to finally run some water up to my base from a pool of water inside a nearby mountain. I used to complain about the Wi-Fi water in ASA, but honestly at this point, it is such a lifesaver. And then the last thing we needed to do was give ourselves a little haircut to have us looking like our proper self. And with that, it was time to get started on our first build. So that is our first build for this playthrough. This will be our workshop for the remainder of the playthrough, and my intent was for it to look like a building where ore would be processed. So we have like a main section up here, and then we've got the shaft that connects it down to another section. This bottom portion will be where we keep all of our visual storage bins. The second floor here will be where we have all of our crafting stations, like our fabricator, and on this third floor, well, I don't really know what I'm going to use this for, to be honest, but you know, here it is. Back outside, as you can see, like I said, we have this nice shaft here that connects our third floor down to this other building, and you can actually go inside the shaft to get from one building to the other. And in this little building down here is where we're going to have our industrial forge eventually. With the build done, I went ahead and named our kangaroo, and we went with Ruru. And then the rest of the day was spent getting all of our visual storage stuff set up on the first floor of our new workshop. As day 23 began, I was in the process of then moving all of our crafting stations over to the second floor of the build. And of course, I could barely see what I was doing as clouds rolled over our base because I chose to live in the tops of the mountains. Then we named our surviving moth Faloof, and because we still need an absolute booty ton of metal to even craft the industrial forge, I took Blizzard out for an extended trip before setting up our forge room with a ton of regular forges. The following day I was out doing a meat run when I would spot a level 140 Thyla. Now I wasn't really planning on taming one right now, but I couldn't pass on it, and eventually we got it knocked out from atop a rock. And finding that Thyla must have been destiny, as I dug up another Ascendant chest, and waiting inside was none other than an Ascendant Thyla saddle. Like I said though, I wasn't planning on taming one and had no mutton on standby, which meant I would have to try to find an Ovis, and quick. Have you ever tried finding an Ovis on Scorched Earth? Needless to say, the Thyla would wake up, and I honestly just couldn't be bothered with it at the moment. So instead I used an experience note that I had grabbed while searching for the Ovis and started taking out anything I could find to try getting some levels. And as I would return to my base that night, we would suffer from something that can only be called getting arced, as my lightning wyvern, who was now about 70-75% ish raised, was completely gone off the face of the arc. It did not die, I didn't cryo it, it didn't starve to death, it was literally just gone. It had vanished into thin air, or probably more likely fell through the map like everything else does. But yeah, needless to say, I was a little heated in this moment, which is why this is a voiceover instead of a, you know, reaction to it happening, because, well, the F word was used a few times. Well, that obviously hurt, but there's no time to sulk. I started making up some electronics, which we used to craft an auto turret, crafted up a generator, and then started making a bunch of gunpowder. While I was waiting, I tested out our long neck rifle we got a few days back, and holy crap, this thing is going to be a game changer. So I headed back to the trench, and this time we are going to use our classic strategy of drawing out wyverns to then be killed by our auto turret, which would work great if I didn't forget to bring the gasoline. At this point though, I was over the entire thing and decided to just go for it, testing out what my rifle could do against a lightning wyvern before finishing it off with my Argent. And honestly, I think we can do this. But where wyverns fail to kill us, the heat comes through. I was about to die from the heat alone, so I threw down a sleeping bag and let the process take place. I believe that is death number 3 on this playthrough. After respawning, I found a few eggs I wanted to check out, but first I had to dispose of one last poison wyvern. So with it gone, I headed in, and oh baby, did we find an egg, a 140 fire wyvern. Now I was fully prepared that I might lose my Argent in the process of getting this egg out, but we did a good enough job picking them off in advance, as nothing was following us. And while I might not have used the turret for getting the wyvern egg, I at least now have something defending my little base from all of those pesky Argents. Of course, we wasted no time getting the egg incubating, and then did another meat run for the raising process. Really, I think I just wanted an excuse to get out and use the new rifle. This thing is just too much fun. Later in the day, the little fella would hatch, and it sort of looks like the one that killed us earlier. I'm not sure if it was the same level or not, but to me at least it really looks the same. But I was not taking any chances of this one glitching through the map. No, this fella will spend the first part of its life living on this small platform. And with that, it was back to trying to farm experience, as I'm still a few levels short of the forge. Before long, I had finally reached level 80, which meant I could unlock the industrial forge. And as a little reward for my hard work, the Ark granted me with finding a delicious little sheep who thought it was safe inside of a bush. So I took it back to my base for harvesting. All right there, brother. Ooh, I almost fell right in that hole there. That would have been tragic. Come here, buddy. Get your head out that rock. I just want to show you something. There it is, brother. How that one look. Golly, that's a nice number. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you count, kids. Oh man, we're gonna be eating good tonight here. So we have the forge unlocked, but when it comes to crafting it, that is a whole nother issue. I had all of the metal I would need, I just didn't have anything else that I needed. So I started whipping up some paste and took Blizzard out for a quick crystal run. Next, I headed out to gather some organic polymer when I would get jumped by a death worm. And surprisingly enough, this one was actually all alone. So I flew around on my Argent, jumping off quickly to fire off shots with my rifle until eventually I would land that last fatal shot. For some reason, every mantis on my arc decided to all disappear together, so unable to find any, I decided to go get oil first. But first, I had to stop at base to imprint on the wyvern, and while there, I made up some trank darts in case we should run into another Thyla. I arrived at the oil pump, and this baby was not living up to expectations. We were still a whopping 300 oil short of making the forge. On the bright side though, I would locate a level 145 Thyla nearby. So not taking any chances this time, I put together a poorly constructed gate trap and failed several times to drop the Thyla into the trap. Look, I'm 5'7". Basketball was not exactly my sport growing up. Eventually we hit the shot though and got the Thyla down. So with that taming, I decided to hit some nearby drops, but apparently this purple one must have thought it was my father. And if that purple drop represents my father, then this yellow ring drop must be me. A disappointment. The next day would see me doing another death worm video shoot until I got one separated away from the group. As I did more damage to this one, it started to have a weird visual glitch that had this guy looking like a massive blue sausage, which I guess is better than another blue food. Before long though, we had it down and I had enough levels to unlock the chem bench. Later in the day, I would return to find the Thyla had finished taming, and then because I'm just waiting on oil, I headed over to the red ob to gather pearls instead, as electronics was the only thing missing for making the chem bench. Once I had enough, I headed out to start farming death worms with my Thyla for their horns. You see, I want to try doing the Manticore boss with an army of mantis, and to tame mantis, I need death worm horns. Back at base for another imprint, I got those electronics crafting, and then it was back out farming worms for their horns. As I made a lap around the dunes, I would stop off at this little Easter egg spot. Now I'm sure most people already know about this, but I figured I would show it off anyways. As you head inside these ruins, you're going to want to hang a right and go down this hallway. Eventually you will come to a spot on the wall that can be broken into, head inside here and go through one more breakable rock, and you will find this cool little cave spot with some sort of dino skeleton, a survivor skeleton, and all sorts of cave drawings. If you ignore the bones, it's actually a very cozy little spot. So detour over, it was back to killing death worms for the rest of the day. Returning home again, I got the chem bench crafted up and I placed it down inside of our workshop, and then I crafted some additional oil pumps to hopefully speed our oil production along. After that, the entirety of this day was just spent out farming death worm horns, which would eventually allow me to unlock the industrial cooker. And as the day was coming to an end, I would spot my first mantis for taming. All lathered up with the latest scent from Decor, I went to work on seducing our mantis friend, until of course it made its way to my Thyla, which I almost could not have parked further away. Luckily the taming wasn't harmed at all. That is until the arch nemesis of any mantis showed up, vultures, a rivalry that dates back to the earliest records of mankind. This would in fact mess up the taming and set us back to square one, but eventually I had my first mantis tame. I was in the area, so I decided to once again peek in on our oil, and I'll be damned, these pumps are now working overtime. I'm not sure if it just took me being within render distance or what, but my little American heart was filled with joy. Back on the hunt for mantis, I spotted the cool looking one worth taming, but before I could even get started, an alpha death worm wanted to introduce itself. It even brought a little friend with it to make things extra difficult. The loss of its friend really had this guy freaking out until eventually I would put him out of his misery. Somehow in all of that chaos of fighting those worms, the mantis I was originally after had vanished. But on the bright side, I did get another Ascendant map from killing the Alpha, and this chest had an Ascendant shotgun, just not the one that I wanted. But I'm an American, so I tested it out anyways, and it actually does pretty decent damage. Back at base, it was finally time for us to craft up our industrial forge we've been working so hard for, and that baby fits in there perfectly. With that sorted, I headed back out to search for more mantis, and just as I got started hopping along on my Thyla, another alpha worm rudely interrupted me. We made short work of this one though, and honestly, I'll take the easy levels. After searching for a while, I found a level 140 and 135 hanging out together, probably just talking crap about me. This time I made sure to clear out the area first just to be safe, and then inserted one horn to play the game. However, if you haven't figured it out yet, I'm a bit of a moron, and so of course I didn't realize my bug spray was running out. The mantis was overwhelmed by the sudden smell of my swampy ass and rushed in to neutralize me, but after retreating long enough for her to forget she was mad, so like probably 2 months, I got both of them tamed. The next day we had some deja vu, starting off the day again with a treasure hunt on our way home for an imprint. This time we got the shotgun we wanted, it's just a very expensive BP. Back on the mantis hunt, I would find another 140, and this one is our first male. There were some nearby vultures, so again, not taking any chances, and soon enough, it was tamed. One of the reasons I like this cryo mod is that it shows you the point distribution of your tames. So for example, this mantis got 42 points into melee, which is pretty decent. Later in the day, I spotted another 135 male, and while we already have our male for breeding, this one might have better stats, so I got it tamed, and no, it does not. Then as the night was ending, I returned to base just in time to watch our little baby wyvern become an adult. Of course, I wasted no time taking flight on our new beast, and for good measure, I grabbed an explorer note to help it earn some quick levels. Emboldened by the power of my new mount, I headed back into the trench in search of some eggs and to draw out some some wyverns for experience. That is until I did that thing where I don't notice my stamina and was forced to land. Things got way too close for comfort as I almost lost my brand new wyvern, but we survived, and so back at base, I named it Citrine. Waiting on her to heal up some, I decided to test out my mantis and what it could do with one of our pikes, and it's not bad considering that it has no levels pumped into melee yet. And then I crafted up a cryo fridge, which for the mod I'm using, you can craft these right from your inventory. On my way back out, I spotted a red ring drop I had to get, and well, from here things got interesting as something came along and tried to hit me, hitting my wyvern and sending it into a panic, which then caused it to launch me under the map into the mesh. In a panic, I paused my game thinking I was going to free fall down through the mesh, but I was fine. I was just kind of hanging out down here, standing around, just checking out the, environment down here and thinking about maybe even moving my base down here. Eventually, I would work my way up a hill and kind of find a little spot that I could jump back up into the real world, and yeah, that was interesting. So after that little hiccup, I spent the rest of the night grabbing eggs like this 165 fire and just farmed wyverns for experience. Then, just as the night was ending, I spotted a max level pyromane in the trench. So I went back to base and grabbed my piece as I figured it would do enough damage without me accidentally killing the pyromane, because we all know I will. Wyverns actually make taming these things very easy on Scorched, as you can just basically pick them up and fly them over to somewhere with water. So my initial thought was to take it over to the red obelisk, dropped it in, and then I started blasting until it was ready to ride. Initially, as I started running around, I wasn't aware that you didn't actually have to kill things to drain the fire charge and reset the timer. I would figure this out eventually, but not before the worst possible thing would happen, a sandstorm. This would slow our pyro down and would begin to drain its stamina, which meant it would not be able to keep up with any of the wild creatures. Surprisingly though, I managed to keep things rolling until I ran out of stamina. Now, there's a little trick in sandstorms with your regular tames where you just jump off of them and they'll regain stamina, but yeah, you don't want to exactly do that when you're trying to tame a pyromane. I tried running to my wyvern to get away, but it was too late and I would burn up like Anakin on Mustafar. So I would quickly return on my Argent to begin the process again. Surely if I just stand here on the back of my wyvern, that little kitty won't be able to reach me, right? Gotcha! Returning again, now on my other Argent, I would arrive just in time to save my main Argent from being burned alive. I noticed this area was crawling with Stratos, and I wasn't sure if their kickback damage would mess up the taming, so instead I scooped up the pyromane and headed to the southern part of the map. After chasing it around the river some, we were back to taming, and before long, I had myself a pyromane. Since I was down here, I figured why not go ahead and run the cave that's over here. These are the ruins of Nosti, which hold the artifact of the destroyer and are located roughly right here on your map. Now honestly, using the pyromane to do caves is probably a bit cheap. First of all, the ability to transform from large to small makes it capable of fitting anywhere where you can fit. A lot of things don't aggro to it, and honestly, it's strong enough to basically fight through anything or quick enough to just outrun everything. And on my way through the cave, I would grab a drop which held a nice little mantis saddle. Before long, I had grabbed the artifact, and just to make sure everyone knew how easy this was, my pyromane left a steaming hot crap behind for proof. After all of that chaos, I had to hunt down some moths for their silk, which I needed to repair my armor because the pyromane broke it. And of course, I had to name him Entei. Then I got some air conditioners set up in our top floor and began incubating the 165 fire egg. And for all of her hard work taking out deathworms, our Thyla had earned the name Earthworm Jenny. After that, I headed back to the trench to see about finding a mate, but the best I saw was level 115. I did, however, run into an alpha wyvern, and so began the Dance of the Dragons. Yeah, that one's gonna piss some people off. But I underestimated its power and things were getting close, so I started using my rifle, and eventually, despite her having the high ground, we took her down and stole all that sweet wyvern milk. Apparently, the Scorched Earth DLC comes with barrels that you can store things in for an extended time, so with the milk all in, I sealed it up for safekeeping. Checking on my egg, I noticed it was somehow too cold, so I took it outside to use torches instead. While it was incubating, I did another massive metal run with Blizzard and returned just in time to see our new baby hatching. It even has some nice Dorito-like colors to it. With that raising, I figured I might as well get our first batch of Mantis eggs produced, and if that is not one of the most god-awful sounds in this game, I don't know what is. Then I spent the rest of the night just tidying up our base when another cloud rolled in, and mixed with the fire of our grill, I actually thought for a second that my house was burning down. Early next morning, I grabbed a purple drop filled with salt. Normally this would be a lame find, but I can use this salt to extend the life of the milk I didn't seal away. So I got some vessels down to store the extra. And with eggs now ready to hatch, I figured it was time to build somewhere proper for hatching them. So the rest of the day was spent just gathering materials and crafting building pieces for our next build. This would continue into day 40 until eventually it was time to start building. But of course, the build was slightly misplaced, and so I had to pick up all of my work and start again. So that is the second build of this playthrough, and honestly, it's not the most complex build, but what it lacks in complexity, I think it makes up for in the fact that we are integrating it into the cliffside, and it has features like this balcony overhang that I feel like makes it really feel like a mountainside mining town sort of build. And like I said before, this is going to essentially be our hatchery where we'll be hatching and raising all of our baby mantis going forward. With the build done, I spent the rest of the day out looking for paracers, because for one of the levels of the boss fight, I would like to try using Ceratos, and in order to tame them, you need something tanky. My initial plan was to go with the racer because I've already got an ascendant saddle for him. However, it would seem that racers are just non-existent on my arc. I searched all day, and not only did I not find any good levels, I barely found any at all. And come to think of it, I've only seen a few throughout this whole playthrough, and we're almost halfway through at this point. On my way back home, I stopped over at the trench where I would find a 165 lightning egg. Now, I'm not sure if this is a single player glitch, but occasionally my wyvern trench becomes just a little bit overspawned. Needless to say, I would run like Captain Jack Sparrow. Since we have the hatchery built, I decided to start raising a female baby to add it to our breeding group. So while she was in the early stages of raising, I added a little bridge connecting our workshop to where our hatchery is, and then I started adding another small build on the cliff below our hatchery. This build is going to be what we use as our greenhouse, and I didn't do a montage for this build because it's a bit all over the place and I didn't finish it in just one sitting. But eventually we had it done enough to where we could start putting down our crop plots, and as you can see, these are getting 300% greenhouse bonus. These walls are actually greenhouse, we just skinned them to look like the western skin. Now to tame Ceratos, I'll also need honey for making the kibble, so I headed to the beehive tunnels and found one surprisingly quick. Unfortunately, it had its head stuck in the wall, making it impossible to feed, and I began getting stung. It would free itself eventually, and I would manage to get the first feed on it. But of course, it would eventually shove its head back up a wall until it was now losing taming progress. On the plus side, I found out that a chainsaw is a pretty fun way of taking out bees. Eventually, it would come free again, allowing me to start the process over before flying up out of reach and then apparently dying from starvation. After going home for an imprint, I would return and luckily find another bee, but this one was already not looking promising as it was flying up high out of reach. Once it came down to the ground, I got it fed, and then yeah, you guessed it, head stuck in the wall. I would take out my frustration by just spawn camping bees with my chainsaw. Eventually, it would lose taming as well, and knowing that it was going to die, I just headed home as my mantis was due for another imprint, and I basically just wasted an entire day failing to tame bees. Sick and tired of getting stung both physically and spiritually, I decided to turn my attention elsewhere, collecting seeds with coconut, getting some water ran to our greenhouse, and then collecting poop from our tames. Of course, I wasn't collecting this for some kind of weird fetish. I had dung beetles to tame for our garden, so I headed out to the desert, and before long I had one tamed, and then later in the day, a second one tamed. And as the sun was starting to set, I got them back to base to start churning out fertilizer. Desperate to get a bee for honey production, I was lucky enough to find another one. However, it was already obsessed with the wall. I would eventually feed it, but you get the drill at this point. It got stuck on the wall. I went back to base to an imprint, and when I returned, it was not only still stuck on the wall, no, this bee is an overachiever. This bee was actually in the wall. So for a pick-me-up, I spent the better part of the day doing loot runs instead until a red drop would sink into the ground in front of my eyes, just to really rub some salt in the wound. Beaten down by the world outside, I returned home to tend to my plants in the dark, and then I decided to make some improvements to my greenhouse build. So this is what it looks like in its final state. Again, we built this thing right up on the cliffside, and I used a lot of those cross supports underneath the stairs that I feel like gives it a mining camp sort of feel. I then realized that my dung beetles were not making fertilizer, so I put them in our trap and enabled wander. And please settle this for me in the comments, because we've had debates about this back and forth on live streams. Do dung beetles need to have wandering enabled to produce fertilizer? Anyways, just as I got done with that, I realized my wyvern had finished raising, so we took it out for a little test run and did some leveling for basically the entire day, before returning later that night and realizing I only needed a little bit of paste and crystal to make up the grinder, which with all of the loot I've accumulated wouldn't be a bad idea. I already had the stuff to make the paste, and then it was crystal gathering time. Before long, I was able to make up not only the grinder, but also an industrial cooker, and after moving some stuff around, I got the grinder down and started grinding up all of our extra loot. Overall, the grinder cost us 800 paste, 3200 metal bars, 600 polymer, 2000 crystal, and 600 oil to make, and we turned that into 3450 paste, 8800 metal bars, 2800 polymer, 900 crystal, 1500 chitin, 680 electronics, 10,000 hide, 350 obsidian, 850 pearls, and that's not even everything. So all in all, I think it was worth making. Then with our newest mantis all grown up and bred, I went ahead and moved the air cons underneath the floor of our new hatchery hatchery and got another batch of eggs hatching, which actually gave us not one, but 2 sets of twins. As I was getting ready to begin raising our new babies, I realized that I had 2 more females in cryos from our first batch of eggs. I'm honestly not sure why I didn't raise these ones with the original female, but I'm just gonna go ahead and blame Wildcard. Regardless, I got our new females raising, as well as a male who came out with better stats than his father and will be replacing him as our breeder. Once the babies were on the trough, I headed back to the bee tunnel to try again. Unfortunately, no bees were in the area, so I decided to do the nearby cave. This cave is known as the Old Tunnels. It holds the artifact of the Gatekeeper and is located roughly right here on your map. This cave was at least a little bit more interesting than the first, as some rubble golems would occasionally block my path. And of course, I would have to go on foot through this choke point, but again, the Pyromane ability kind of makes this a bit cheesy. As I began making my way down to the artifact, one rubble golem really didn't want me to make it through. However, I would give him a little sidestep before having possibly the most embarrassing moment of this playthrough, as I completely missed this easy jump and plummeted to the bottom. Eventually, though, I would make my way up and we have our second artifact. Emerging from the cave, I would find that another bee had spawned in, and because I've got a bit of a pain kink, I started the process again. Thankfully, this bee had at least 2 functioning brain cells, and we were able to get it tamed. Back at base, I would add our new hive to the greenhouse, and I really like how it looks sort of attached to the cliff face in a very natural sort of way. And now with babies on the raise and us currently living out of our workshop, I felt it was time to do another build, so the rest of the night was spent gathering and of course crafting pieces. Before getting started though, I figured it would be a good time to also throw it on a bunch more AC units and get our lightning egg incubating. Now you might be wondering why I'm just sitting on the toilet. Well, let me tell you a quick story. You see, I started streaming on day 50 and forgot to also hit the record button for about the first 10 minutes. Well, in those 10 minutes, one of my mantis babies starved to death due to blatant parent neglect, so here we are now swallowing our pride so we can get some spoiled meat for them. I wasn't feeling the need to go at first, but I realized I had some spoiled meat in the trough outside. Soon after that, our new wyvern would hatch and I cryoed it to move it to our outside pad, and then after all of that running around, I was finally ready to do my business. So now, with all of that drama out of the way, we can finally get to work on our next build. Alright, so there is our next set of builds for this playthrough, and these are basically just supposed to be like little worker houses where the miners might live, up here on the top of the mountain, so they can at least end their day with a nice view. I'm probably going to have one of these as like a food storage area, one as like a kitchen, and then the other one as my actual house. Now to fill them out, I crafted a food storage shed from our visual storage mod and added that inside of our first house. Basically, this acts as a giant fridge. Anything perishable you place inside will be preserved longer. So inside I added some jars for poly, milk, and antidotes, some bins for berries and crops, and more bins for cactus sap. I believe at this point they've also added ways to store meat as well. Next, I crafted up some fridges for the things that couldn't be stored in there and used our second room as basically our kitchen area. Hid a water tank behind the build for some water, and then set up a drop box up here for moving things about faster. So with a new baby wyvern and now jars to store milk in, I went back to the trench where I would hunt down and eliminate a low-level alpha wyvern, and then stored its milk nicely in our new pantry. And with the rooms now mostly set up, I headed back to the trench to look for a Pyromane mate, but had zero luck. You see, I thought it might be funny to try doing Gamma Manticore with nothing but a Pyromane shoulder pet and a Pyromane mount, just to see how broken they really are. Unfortunately for my sanity, I would head back to look for more bees, as one hive is just not going to produce enough honey to tame multiple Ceratos. I would find one fairly quickly, and if there's any bright side in all of this, it's that we seem to be finding a lot of bees. Maybe they took all of the spawn points from the racers. I couldn't for the life of me figure out though why this bee didn't want to eat, but I'm going to give you guys a few seconds on the clock to figure this one out before I tell you the answer. Alright, let's see what you all wrote down. You're trying to use cooked meat. Yes, that is correct. You see, I forgot the flowers. So a long trip home to collect them, and I would return to find the bee stuck in the wall, but still feedable. And soon after, we had it tamed. Since I was already over this way, I figured why not swing over by Nasty and see if I can't get some good loot out of the cave drops. There were no cave drops. I would, however, grab another artifact, but not before getting my armor busted by a very rude Arthro. And then on the way out, one drop had respawned, and it had a mantis saddle in it. It's not the BP I was looking for, but at least it's something. And after another trip home to tend to my bugs, it was back out to search for more bees, killing off everything I could find in hopes that maybe it would free up a spawn. With no bees in sight, I figured why not get another artifact from the tunnels, as I will need multiple. Somehow I almost missed the easy jump again, but eventually I grabbed the artifact and then breezed back out of the cave. Bored of all the bee play, I headed to the third and final artifact cave of Scorched Earth, and I totally didn't get all turned around in the mountains and completely lose track of where the cave was. I would find it eventually though, and this is the Grave of the Tyrants. It holds the artifact of the crag and is located roughly right here on your map. Again, using the pyromane, we were met with very little resistance as we worked our way down, and before long I was at the artifact playing jump rope with a bat before jumping off to grab our prize. And only just now did I realize that my pyromane is actually red and very fitting for us. On the way out, I stopped by these little bushes and gave them a good whipping. These bushes actually give rare flowers, and with us starting our own mountainside bee business, we would be needing them. Then as I was departing the cave, I realized it is basically right behind our base. I just didn't realize that would be a problem.
Wait, what? Why is Coconut down there? Oh my gosh, what's going on? What is going on with my tames? Why are they all down here? What is going on? The cave dropped them. Holy crap, this is bad. When I spawned back out from being in the cave, it must have dropped them down. Oh my god, we're gonna lose some of our tames. Yep, velocity's down. What the heck, Ark?
Yes, apparently rendering out of the cave caused my tames to drop down through the floor, and well, we lost Coconut, Velocity, and Avocado. Rest in peace, my friends. On the bright side though, I've got a lot of honey now for making kibble, and I've already got the chowder I would need from drops. So now I just needed to make a trench run to grab some wyvern eggs. Before long, I had the kibble crafted up, made up some metal billboards, and then some cannonballs to tame a golem because I can't find any racers. And we already had some cannons again from hitting drops. Down the hill from me, I would spot a level 90, which I would lure up the cliffside for safe taming. But it decided to walk straight over my billboards, and I would have to draw it off the cliff in order to pick them up. But this worked out perfectly for us as it got stuck underneath the land bridge and couldn't walk through. So once it went into boulder mode, I quickly threw a few billboards behind it, and we had a nice little makeshift trap where we can hit the golem, but the golem can't hit us. And before long, we had it down. While waiting on that to starve, I got another batch of Manus eggs on the air cons and started bleeding myself dry to make some hemogoblin cocktails for the Cerrado taming, as well as some med brews to keep healing myself back up. Then as night set in and a storm raged overhead, our new stock of baby mantis were born to see a man, their father if you will, standing in the dark, dripping from both arms. What a wonderful first sight for our new little ones. Of course, I got the new females raising right away, and by then it was time to feed the golem. It would have been a much better moment if the Cerrado didn't show up to ruin the shot. Next, I took our new golem out for a little bit of leveling, as I'm going to need this guy to have as much health as possible for its new life as a punching bag. I tried grabbing a note, but it seems the golem is just too tall. I even tried turning into a rock on top of the note and then quickly transforming and jumping on in hopes it would register closer to the ground. So I was off to Rexland for some good experience when a Titanosaur would just poof into existence. I thought I'd give it a go trying to take it on with my wyvern, and the weather seemed to support my plan as the sky turned to an epic battle scene. But then things cleared up and I lost interest, so I actually managed to grab an explorer note with our golem, and it was back to farming Rex, before eventually making my way over to the pit to Will Smith the crap out of some wyverns. I would continue whacking them into the early morning before stealing a few more eggs, making some more chowder, and then of course some more kibble for Cerrado taming. I wouldn't have to go far as this canyon underneath my base is absolutely crawling with them. Just in one little pile, I would spot a 140, a 135, and a level 150. Of course, this meant it would be an absolute pain in the butt trying to get the 150 separated, but on the plus side, having to kill a bunch off meant I would have more spines to use for making more hemogoblin. And as if the Cerrados weren't annoying enough, this area was also crawling with rock elementals that made it even more fun. It would take me all the way into day 58, but eventually we got the level 150 away and into a dark corner where I would start feeding it drinks and spitting some game. After a while, the Cerrado was looking pretty drunk, but of course I jumped off too early and my golem started trying to tussle. Luckily, it didn't hurt the taming effectiveness at all, but I also noticed that this Cerrado had a baby with it who we also got drunk. And yeah, that just does not feel very okay. Of course, like any drunk friend, this Cerrado would start pestering me for food. If only we had a Waffle House in game, this thing would be an instant tame. Then, as we were just starting to get to know each other, a few of its friends showed up and started insisting that the Cerrado leaves with them. But little did they know, I've got a 40 in my Ford Fiesta. Because of all the distractions and obstacles, it would eventually sober up before I could get it tamed, so I started the process again, and it could not have been closer. Now, if you're wondering why I sound muffled in this part, that's because I had my hand over my mouth in disbelief of how close this was getting.
It's gonna be close. It's gonna be really close. Oh, it's gonna be so close. Okay, we got it. We got this. We got this. I can't even cross my fingers anymore. I'm so old. 94. Oh, come on, dude. Oh my gosh. It's not gonna be enough. 96. Oh my gosh. 97. Come on, dude. Come on. Give me a 2%er. 98. Come on. Come on. Oh my gosh. 99. Dude, one more. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Oh my gosh.
Nope.
Nope, not enough. 99%.
I quickly started pumping blood out of myself as it was all I needed for making another hemogoblin, but by the time I had it crafted, the Serato had drank some Pedialyte and was basically sober. So with my golem needing to heal and me now being out of kibble, I returned to base and finally named my second wyvern Dorito. I was gonna have to wait on my beehives to make more honey for making more kibble, so I figured I might as well go try to find more bees. Unfortunately, there were none about, and as I would return to base, I got back just in time to get a final imprint on our lightning wyvern milliseconds before it finished raising. Of course, a new wyvern means we gotta take it out for some fun. I'm definitely a fire wyvern guy myself for their practical usage, but there is something very satisfying about ripping things apart with a beam of lightning. Checking back in at the tunnel, I found possibly the chillest bee to ever exist. This dude has been smoking them rare flowers, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't eventually get stuck in the wall. I tried leaving render to get it to be unstuck, but when I came back, it was now outside and heading to the moon. Eventually, it would land and I would be able to feed it, but as I was running to get a final feed on it, a wolf would blindside block me out of the play and the bee would end up dying. As a consultation prize, I grabbed a level 130 Morelltops to replace Coconut, knocked it out in the alleyway between our builds, and then completely forgot about using sap and fed it berries. I'm pretty sure all of the stress from the bee taming has just melted my brain even more. Then, needing more blood for cocktails, I put down a storage box to store all of my valuables and began bleeding myself to death. Why waste med brews when I can just keep on respawning? The following morning, I crafted up a few more delicious Bloody Marys and then headed back to the trench to grab a few more eggs for making kibble, because the only eggs I have at base right now are high levels and I want to keep them just in case. Luckily, I only had to make up 2 pieces of kibble as the taming did not go down, so after picking off a few more of the Serato's buddies, it was back to getting it drunk. It was about halfway drunk when a 145 female would show up looking for a drink as well. Now, I didn't want to lose out on eventually taming that 145, so our only choice was to tank them both. With the 150 now drunk and hungry, my golem would keep its friend distracted while I moved in for the tame. Returning home, I would find the Morelltops had finished taming as well, so I went straight into gathering narcoberries to craft more narcotics that we're gonna need for making more cocktails. The next day, while waiting on more honey, I got another batch of Manus eggs ready to go, and then decided to wait on hatching them and instead went out to look for another bee. But this one apparently has the juke move of a prime berry Sanders. Of course, it would eventually fly up out of reach before descending upon me like a honey-covered angel, and then once again breaking my ankles, leaving me grabbing at the rocks. Eventually, though, we got it tamed, added its hive to our honey farm, and then it was time to hatch the mantis before spending the rest of the day stealing eggs, making chowder and kibble, and then cocktails. And then it was back into the pit to tame the 145. This time I was smart enough to bring some gates so I could keep her from wandering off. However, it felt like the gates were maybe messing up how well she could hit me, so I decided to pick them up for now, before rushing home like an absolute madman because, you know, of course, I forgot the kibble for taming the Serato. But in doing this, I felt like a kid again on a Saturday morning, jumping up from the TV and rushing up to grab a snack to get back in time before the commercials were over. As she became drunk, I dropped the trap back down to keep her from moving, but she was a bit of a free spirit and would not be held down. I ended up just boxing in the area as best as I could, but I would highly recommend doing this with a few behemoth gates. Then, as she was a mere seconds away from needing her last feed, she would sober up. So I would stand there taking another beating from her, and eventually she was tamed. Of course, with now having a male and female, I had to immediately let them get their freak on, threw the egg on the ACs to start incubating it, and while that was going, I spent most of the night out running drops as I really need to find a mantis saddle BP before eventually returning just in time to see our baby hatch. The drop running would continue for the first half of day 63 before deciding it was time to do another build, and so I started gathering materials when tragedy struck.
Sit down, son. Why did it get knocked down there? Oh my gosh, it wasn't on neutral, or it wasn't on passive. I just lost a Serato. Oh, that was a good start. This is exactly why we need this building. Please tell me it was the male. Oh, it was the female. I just lost my breeder. At least we got a perfect male. At least we got our perfect male baby before that happened. That's absolutely devastating. We just lost our female. It literally, I don't know. It must have chased the Argent off the ledge.
I really love this area for the atmosphere and how close it is to a lot of things, but if you're gonna live here, you definitely want to have some turrets up to keep your stuff safe. With that little incident, it was more apparent than ever that we needed to get this next build done ASAP. So it was back to gathering and eventually crafting pieces for all of the next day. And early into day 65, I was ready to get possibly my final build of this playthrough done.
This is why we're building this. This is why we're building this. I had no idea that was even happening. I didn't see the damage numbers at all. We're so far away from our tames. My Relatops literally just got killed. Not even that, like, it's been churned up, like, recently. Like, really, like, I haven't lost many tames to that type of thing. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like, recently, it's been, like, one after another. Why did it just die? Did it start? Oh my gosh, dude, I gotta stop. I'm not paying enough attention to these damn tames, man. Like, I'm really not. He definitely starved. Yeah, because I was using him to heal this guy, and I wasn't paying attention. Dude, we've lost 3 tames tonight. Oh my gosh, dude. What an embarrassing night. This is an embarrassing night. This is gonna be a weird part of the stream, or of the final video. I'm like, yeah, so then I wasn't paying attention to this, and it died as well.
Alright, so that makes quite possibly our final build of this playthrough, and if only we had this build done a few days ago. Yes, this build is going to be where I keep all of my tames safe and sound going forward, and I designed this build to look like an old lumber mill of sorts. And honestly, this might be my favorite build we've done in this video. It's, again, not overly complicated, but I still think it looks really nice. Now, obviously, my favorite touch is this little wood processing line that runs throughout the build, using the Aaron Longstaff Western Decor mod for the logs. Of course, I immediately moved my remaining tames inside to avoid any more incidents, and made sure to get a trough down to make sure they were fed, because how embarrassing would it be if something starved to death? I mean, only a real dummy would let that happen. Cleaning up the mess our dead tames left behind, I decided to keep their souls just in case I choose to go on a little side mission of taming an Oasasaur. Then I named our rock elemental the only appropriate name, Graveler, and spent the night farming Ceratos as my stock of spines had ran out. The following day I threw up a wind turbine on the side of the cliff to provide power to our new build, because we worked hard making these builds nice, so why not ruin them with a giant fan? And using the turbine's power, I got another turret up on top of our lumber mill for some extra protection. This is such a good idea, surely we're not going to regret this later on. I then named my lightning wyvern Amethyst and hatched another batch of mantis eggs. The reason we're hatching so many is to get the best possible stats on an entire army of them. While out and about, I spotted a 140 Morellatops, and in that moment decided that it wasn't worth reviving it with the Oasasaur. Unfortunately, when I brought it home, I had a bit of a brain fart. You can literally see the brain matter leaking out of my head as I dropped the Morellatops right on top of the building that has our new turret. I was trying to get it like pinned in on the building or something, and yeah, I didn't really think it through. So, change of plans. Let's go get ourselves an Oasasaur. I spotted this one fairly quickly out on the dunes, washed my sweaty ass in its water, because that's how you tame these, and began picking off vultures. I tried doing this the legit way on foot first, but the vultures would begin to overwhelm me, and so it was time to set them ablaze. And with sand swirling all around us, we got the Oasasaur tamed and named it Dorito Force 1. And then I realized it was going to take a very long time to reincarnate our tames, and well, I don't really have that much time to wait, so yeah, not doing that. So I began making the slow journey home before quickly deciding to dump the Dorito Force 1 on top of this little pillar where it would spend the rest of its days. And then on the way home, I would spot a replacement Daedon anyways, so that whole experience was just basically to say we did it. As I was returning home though, our babies were crying out for their father, so I quickly dropped the Daedon safely out of turret range and went to imprint on them. Hopefully it'll just stay over here while we do this really quick. Yeah, it didn't stay over there. It got killed by the turret. I really need to stop having this like, it'll be fine attitude when I do these sort of things. So still needing a replacement, I would eliminate any low levels until eventually I found a level 130, trapped it, and knocked it out. I then found a level 110 Morellatops, and because the it'll be fine attitude is still a thing, I knocked it out in the open, risking it running into the turret. This time though, I remembered to use sap. No, you see what actually happened was I was using berries and somebody in the live stream called me out, so then I used sap and we got it tamed. The following morning, we named our new Morellatops Pistachio, tamed up the Daedon, and moved them to the safety of our lumber mill. I would again spend most of this day just outrunning drops in hopes of finding that saddle BP before returning home to name our Daedon Dr. Pepper Pig. And then checking our beehives, I had enough honey to tame several Ceratos. So of course that meant the next day was spent stealing eggs, making kibble, level and farming more Ceratos for their spines. At this point, we are basically in full boss prep mode and doing a lot of grinding, especially considering how Ceratos are tamed. So I'm going to do my best to not oversaturate you all with the process. With that said, by the following day, I had a whopping 29 kibble made up, and while out grabbing a drop, I spotted a 145 female with a level 135 male. However, I still need more cocktails, so I marked their location on the map and then headed home to bleed myself dry. This time though, I had the bright idea to use a mind wipe tonic and pump all of my points into health. That way I can get more packs for each life. By the next day, I had plenty of cocktails and kibble on hand, so I went back for that 145. I forgot my gates though, so instead I just tried keeping her on this little land bridge. But of course, she wasn't having any of that, and with one tailspin, tossed us overboard. This was definitely not ideal, as there were plenty of distractions down here I would have to deal with, and of course, because of them, my feeds were a bit off, and she sobered up just before taming. But eventually, we would get her tamed. Then, before I could even return to base, I spotted another level 140 female, and again, I marked my map to come back to this one later on. But before going back for that, it was time for our next batch of mantis eggs. I unfortunately was short on meat, so I spent basically the entire day doing a giant meat run, and then made up some more delicious toilet meat for the babies. Then it was back to get that Cerato, blocking it into this valley, getting it drunk, and this one, conveniently enough, somehow got itself stuck in our golem and just couldn't move, so the taming was very easy. Later that day, I would spot another 135 female basically right underneath my base, and it was more of the same. We got her tamed, and then back at base, got some breeding going. Returning to the trench on an egg run, I finally spotted a high-level female pyromane, so of course I took her over to our usual spot for taming, when everyone's favorite art creature would once again rear its ugly head and screw the whole thing up. Oh god, there's a Microraptor. There's a Microraptor here. Hit the Microraptor. Hit the freaking Microraptor, man. Oh my gosh, we're dead. We're gonna die. We're literally surrounded. Like, there's so much bad stuff here right now. We got scorpions, we got ants. We are dead. We are so dead. There goes our chest. Okay, we're out here. We're out here. I don't know how we just survived that, but I mean, good. She would survive, and so this is just me dangling her over the water for 5 minutes while I waited for her taming cooldown to reset. Eventually, we were back on, and in no time at all, we got her pinned in a corner by Daedons and killed. So the next day, it was back to the trench, and apparently losing that 140 was destiny, as a 150 had spawned in its place. This time, though, we got her tamed without any issues, and we now have a mate pair of pyromanes. And back at base, I would name her Hot Mama. So with that, it was back to what I initially intended on doing, stealing eggs and grinding out Cerato spines. With us now having our mate pair of pyromanes, I figured why waste any more time, let's go ahead and give Gamma Manticore a go. So first, I had to grab all of my best flak armor, craft up some absorbent substrate, and then make some gas masks. Next, I crafted up some gunpowder for making more long neck bullets, and of course some stimulants to keep our pyromane from passing out. And with that, it was time to take on Gamma Manticore. Just a man, his rifle, and his two mythical pay-to-win fire cats. Alright baby, here we go. Gamma Manticore time. Let's get this thing done. Go ahead and throw our gas mask on. Look at how nice and shiny that armor looks though. Alright, we'll throw Hot Mama on our shoulder, and then we're going to jump back on Entei, and this is the strategy. So basically, I am just going to ride around on Entei, and I'm just going to keep shooting at it, and it's going to be a battle of attrition, you know, but it's going to take a while, but eventually we're going to get this thing down. I don't think there's a timer in single player, so we have all the time we need to just basically ride around and avoid it and just keep shooting at it until eventually it goes down. And hopefully with Hot Mama on our shoulder, she'll give Entei a mate boost that'll keep him from taking too much damage, help him do more damage if we should have to use him, and yeah, hopefully we'll just be able to avoid this thing long enough and, you know, just cheese it. We're just gonna chase it. So yeah, I would do exactly that. I would just ride around on Entei for the majority of this battle, just popping off shots here and there whenever I had a good opportunity to put damage on the Manticore. Hold that one for me, Peaches. Oh god, it landed. All right. Put one in its face. Oh god, it's zipping us. Oh, it's standing on us. Oh no, that hit us a lot. It hit us with a lot of the poison barbs. We gotta pump some stamina here, pump some stimulant. Now, eventually it would spawn in death worms, but this actually kind of worked out for us because I'm pretty sure the pyromane gets like health back when it does the fire absorb attack, and yeah, it would make quick work of these death worms and get a little bit of health back. Or at least it feels like it. I don't know. Maybe I should read what it actually does. And at one point I found a cozy little corner off to the right underneath this sort of like archway where the Manticore had a lot of issues trying to even reach me. Occasionally it would get in and get shots on me, but I was able to do a lot of damage over here without even getting touched. Oh, we're getting there, man. It is getting so low. I can't believe this is actually going to work. We're actually going to take it down with just shooting it. Oh gosh, it's coming in. Okay, it wants us out of here. It wants us out of here. We're being evicted. We're being kicked out of our apartment. It just threw us out. All right. It is actually so close. This is crazy. Oh, here it comes. Is it gonna get in here? Okay, yep, it's in here. All right, time to go. Oh, hello. Hello, friend. Oh my gosh. Our Pyramane's, it's doing okay. Our Pyramane's fine. It's got like a quarter of its health gone, but I think it's okay. Come here, you big ugly son of a... Shoot you in the face. Oh god. Back to the tunnel. Back to the tunnel. Back to our hidey hole. Oh my gosh, we got this. We're gonna finish it off from in here. Here it comes. All right, I missed. Shoot it in the butthole. There we go. You're going down, you son of a gun. Come on, it has a sliver of health left. Come on. Oh gosh. Oh, we're done. Oh no. Entei's gonna pass out. Entei is definitely gonna pass out. Come on, we can finish it before it happens. Oh my gosh. Come on, man. It's so close. Oh, we gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here. Entei's gonna pass out. I gotta get to a safe distance so that if Entei passes out, I can just ditch him and jump on Hot Mama and we'll just finish it that way. All right, over here should be fine. You're gonna pass out, Entei? Come on, man. If you're gonna pass out, do it, brother. All right, maybe he's okay. I can't quite tell. It's like right on the edge of passing out, but I guess he's fine. All right, this is our final stand then. You got this, Entei. Hold on, buddy. Hold on, buddy. We can do this. You and me, brother. We missed that. Oh my gosh. Oh, the rocks are coming in. It's got to be so close. It's got to be like 1 or 2 more shots. Hey! Gamma Manticore down with nothing but a rifle and some Pyramanes, baby. That's how you do it. You cheese it. You don't do it legit. You don't raise an army. You just cheese it. So there you go, folks. Gamma Manticore completed on day 79 with nothing but 2 Pyramanes and a rifle. Now, I'm not going to say this was my proudest boss battle I've ever done. It was a bit of a cheese, as I said, but you know what? I wanted to prove that it could be done. So with that, our Scorched Earth journey is complete. Now, obviously, I'm kidding. Please don't leave the video. Stick around because we are going to attempt to beat the Manticore on the next 2 difficulties as well, using our other 2 armies of Mantis, wielding pikes, and our Ceratos. So we still have some work to do to get all that ready, but that is Gamma Manticore. So with the boss fight complete, I would spend the rest of the day just cleaning up around base, and at the start of day 80, we now have a nice cozy little fireplace in our house with our Manticore trophy, and our 2 little kitties can rest easy after all of their hard work. Of course, I also got a flag from the fight, but I didn't really know where else to put this except for just kind of outside by the stairs. With all of that excitement getting me hot and bothered, I needed something to bring me back down to earth. So it was back to grinding spines and donating blood until I was wishing I could somehow take the place of my in-game character. It was all for good reason though, as the next day I would find another 145 female Cerato, build her a little trap off this ledge, and she would follow me in like the low IQ beast that she is. We got her tamed up, bred her as well, and then down by where I tamed my golem, I spotted another 145 female. You might remember when we trapped our first Cerato that I recommended using behemoth gates to make it easier. Well, just because I gave that advice doesn't mean I'm going to take it. No, I would use regular gates this entire playthrough just to make things a little bit more difficult. It all worked out though, as she was eventually drunk, but I didn't have enough kibble to finish the tame, and so I would have to use prime meat for that final feed. And after breeding her, I decided to add a few more trophy heads to my little house, and then it was back to the trench, this time though to farm talons off of wyverns. After doing that until my wyvern needed a break, I spent most of the next day just hitting drops in search of that elusive Mantis BP. I would find a pre-made saddle, but nothing else very useful, except of course this map and a bench, and I gotta say this place is coming together. This is the progress you want to see on day 83. The only thing that could make this home a little cozier would be the sounds of tiny baby Cerato feet running through it. It was time to hatch all the Cerato eggs we've been gathering. They would hatch the following morning, and we even got ourselves some cool looking purple and black twins. Then while back out hunting drops, I found another 140 female Cerato doing its best mountain goat impersonation, built another trap below the cliff, and tried drawing her off, but she was a clever girl. Unfortunately for her, she didn't know I have the ability to make gates appear out of thin air, so as she putzed her way into my trap, I locked her in from behind, and we began getting busy as my wyvern watched from a chair in the corner of our hotel room. Early next morning, she was tamed, and then it was back to hunting drops for most of the day before returning just in time to see her egg hatch. And now we had enough Ceratos that it was time to start mass raising these babies. Of course, with all of those babies now raising, we had to do another massive meat run, which in the process of this, we looted a purple map off of something. So wasting no time, I turned my attention towards digging that up, and it was well worth it. All right, baby, what you got for me? Oh, hello. Oh my gosh, an almost 600% Ascendant pump action shotgun. This would have been really nice a few days ago when we were, you know, taking on Gamma Manticore with just guns. Probably could have used that, but you know what? We're gonna test this baby out. Now, obviously, I had to test this baby out, and yeah, it does some nice damage. Back at base, our final mantis had finished raising, and we now have a full army of giant killer bugs. We just need some saddles to put on these guys. But our boss army was missing one final piece, a Utyrannus. So I would spend the rest of the day searching for one. Still in the search for the Utyrannus, I headed to the red obelisk to check there and would grab a drop, which, like most drops, proved to be useless when I would see a sheep running from a scorpion like its life depended on it. Oh gosh, there's an Ovis right here. We just closed that drop to see an Ovis running from a scorpion. It's actually gonna get away. Look at it go. Here, let me help you out, buddy. I got you. Of course, being the good person that I am, I rescued the little fella, took it back to base, and tamed it up with a veggie cake that I'd gotten from some drops, and named it Uti Food. Don't worry, little buddy. That's just a name. You're perfectly safe here. And bored of hunting Utis that apparently don't exist on my arc, I took a detour into the old tunnels. I have one spare artifact at base for doing Beta Manticore, but I still need a third one for doing Alpha. And since I was already over here, I figured I might as well run through Nasty again as well. This time there was actually a red drop inside. It just, of course, had absolutely nothing good inside of it. But at least we can still get our third artifact from in here as well for doing Alpha Manticore. Back home, I added the artifacts to our little house right next to our bed to act as night lights, because quite frankly, the thought of going to that third cave to get 2 more copies of its artifact has been terrifying me and keeping me up all night. So with nothing else to distract me, it was back out to search for Utis and getting my heart broken by drops. Honestly, at this point, I'm convinced that the Uti spawns are somehow broken on my single player game. This painful search would continue all of day 89 as well. I don't really have anything to show for this day. I literally just spent the entire day out looking for Utis and found nothing. At this point, I'm seriously considering just going to this next fight with 18 Mantis, our Daedon, and then I guess just riding a Pyromane and shooting stuff off of its back. Back searching purple drops for Mantis saddle BPs, I would at least find this pre-made saddle before deciding to go back into the Grave of Tyrants to grab the artifact we would need for doing Beta Manticore. While inside, I would find another drop that had another pre-made saddle, and back at base, I would put the artifact up for display. And the rest of the day, it was back to searching for drops. You could say I was starting to get a little bored and just a little loopy. Purple drops, you're the only one that's got what I want. Purple drops, Mantis saddle blueprint, that's the shit I want. But just as the night was ending, I would find a nice scuba tank, which gave me another idea. There is a new cave on Scorched Earth called the Oasis Cave that is through an underwater passage. So after making up some flippers and a crossbow to protect myself in the water, I headed to the red obelisk where the cave is located and dove into the water to enter. Basically, you just head into the water and follow the giant crystals down, go forward just a little bit until you reach a dead end, and if you look up, you'll see where you can re-emerge out of the water into the cave. This area is massive and really very beautiful. I cannot for the life of me understand why they didn't choose to make this into an actual cave with like a 4th artifact for the map. It took some time to even find the drops, but this first one, of course, had absolutely nothing good, and the second one had a sword that is good, but it's just not really what I'm looking for at this point. So after searching surface drops for the rest of the day, I returned home and started putting some levels into my Mantis army. And bored of searching for saddles, I decided to head out and start leveling my Mantis. I figured the best bet would be to stay out on the dunes in hopes of finding death worms to give us that good XP, which eventually I would, and my Mantis would quickly deal with it. It took some of our health, but I'm not too concerned. After all, this is just one Mantis, so wanting to see what the squad could do, I decided to get them all out as we proceeded. Eventually, we would find another death worm and began mowing it down. Remember though, the rest of these Mantis are not saddled and they don't have pikes. However, I would soon find that there's something very wrong with these Mantis, as some of them just decided to completely dip out when the battle started and ended up finding an alpha death worm. We had no other choice but to retreat for the hills, but before we could escape, my Mantis ran out of stamina, and so we had to stand and fight. Luckily, the alpha did not follow, and we made quick work of the first worm. Then, literal milliseconds before the second worm went down, it took 2 of our Mantis with it. And after the fight, I noticed that 2 of my Mantis were still far off in the dunes. I would retrieve them, but I'm now having serious concerns if these cowards will be any good for the boss fight. So the next day, it was back into the graveyard to get a 3rd artifact, and while inside, I found another drop. Oh no, it looks so similar. Oh my god, I was so happy for a second. I was so happy for 1 second.
What does a mantis saddle look like? Oh my gosh, you've got to be, look at that, look at that, look at that, and now look at that. Like, that's so, like, upright, facing in, like, facing towards the right, and then kind of like an angled position. Too similar, man, too similar.
But then back to hunting drops, my luck would churn at least a little bit, as I would find 2 drops back to back with Ascendant Mantis saddles in them. Still no BP, but it's something. Then it was time for another run at the Oasis Cave, but this time a little pest was waiting to greet me at the entrance.
Get off me, punk. I'll shovel you to death. I'm gonna shovel you to death. Don't make me kill you. Hey, can you dig it?
Once inside, I would find 3 yellow drops, each one a little more disappointing than the last, with the best of them all being 5 shotgun shells and 14 stone arrows. Departing the cave, I started day 94 doing a massive meat run for our baby Ceratos, and while at base, I would go ahead and pump some levels into the 2 mantis who would be replacing the ones we lost to the deathworms, and then it was back to hunting drops with nothing good to show for our time. At this point, it was nearly time to attempt the Beta Manticore, but first I needed to do a large wood run as I was short on charcoal that I'll need for making more gunpowder. And with that cooking up, I headed back out onto the dunes to hunt more deathworms for leveling my mantis. I would start off just fighting them one-on-one before realizing that if I keep my wyvern out, they'll just completely ignore me and beat the crap out of the wyvern instead, making this very easy for my mantis. So I would continue doing this for the rest of the day, killing 1 deathworm per mantis just to get them enough health to hopefully mow down the manticore before it can kill them off. The spot I was farming had ran out of worms to play with, so I did a long and almost pointless lap around the map, finding no worms. However, I would grab an explorer note with my mantis, and back in our normal spot, I would take one down just as the note was expiring. I spotted another nearby note on top of a small ruin and figured maybe I could jump to it with one of my mantis. Little did I know, this was a trap.
Alpha boosted, that's alpha boosted. They're alpha boosted. They're alpha boosted. Oh, buddy. Could have been terrible. Oh, that could have been so bad.
So instead, I grabbed one off a nearby cliff and invited the deathworm over for some fun. But he failed to mention his friend was coming along, and they began tag teaming my wyvern. She was taking a beating when luckily I managed to pull their aggro, quickly disposed of one with a now broken pike, and pumped all the points into melee for a little boost fighting the second one. Get him, Dung Beetle! Do it, Dung Beetle, do it! The Dung Beetle's helping out. Get some stamina back. Dung Beetle's doing damage. Go get him, Dung Beetle. Dung Beetles! Sorry, Dung Beetle. And before long, the second one was down as well. Heading back to base to repair the pike, I noticed another purple drop over by the wyvern trench, and this one had another Ascendant Mantis saddle in it. And then it was back to farming worms for the remainder of the night. Mantis all leveled, I went back to base and got some gunpowder going, crafted up a Mind Wipe tonic, which I would use to pump all of my levels into crafting skill. And then it was time to craft up our pikes, and a large handful of these bad boys were coming out with a whopping 755% damage. Next, I crafted up primitive saddles for 7 unlucky mantis and some extra shotgun shells in case things go terribly wrong. With everything basically ready, I wanted to first test out my mantis. I realized when I first tested out the pike way back early in the playthrough, I was actually getting headshots on the Sabertooth. But this time, these are not headshots. These mantis are just beasts. Now, I'm not sure what the damage will translate to on the Manticore, but hopefully it's enough. I, of course, first had to name my mantis army. I asked you all for your best names and then put those names on a spin wheel, and this is what we got. We have Edward, Sir Jonathan IV, Deadpool, Armageddon, Emperor Slash, Maneater, Flick, Stabby Savvy, Blur, Esteem, Master Chef, Scissorhands, Prawn, Man Tits, Hive Lord, Vidra, Tosser of Salad, and Scyther. And before we departed, I figured why not give the troops a little motivational speech. All right, you guys, this is the moment we have been working so hard for. We are about to go take on the Beta Manticore. I believe in you guys. I have raised you from just an egg into a little, just tiny little insects, now into the killers that you are today. I've trained you, forged you, if you will, on the worms of these desert seas, and I believe in you guys. I believe we can go take down the Manticore. Now, some of you are going to die. I'm not gonna lie. Some of you have primitive saddles, and I tried really hard to find better saddles for you, but I'm just gonna be front with you. Some of you are going to die, but in the end, I believe we will be victorious. So let's go do this, guys. So here we go, Beta Manticore time, and honestly, I think my mantis can do this. They should do some really good damage. It just depends on if they're able to stay alive long enough to win the fight. It's a much more straightforward plan this time. We're just gonna let them do work on it while we ride around on Entei because, well, we couldn't find a Yudi, and then of course Dr. Pepper Pig will be healing them. This is just a typical plan. We're just gonna try to take it out. We're just gonna try to take him out. There they go. They're going. They're scattering. Here it comes.
Oh, he didn't. He landed for like 2 seconds. Okay, they are doing a little bit of damage, but he's just not staying on the ground long enough. He barely landed. If he doesn't land, then what do you do, you know? Like, if he never lands, what are you supposed to do? There we go. Get him, guys. Get him, guys. Get him, guys. Shred him. They're not all attacking, and he's just not staying on the ground. He killed them. He just killed one. That had to be one with a primitive saddle. Oh my gosh, he killed it so easily. He killed it so easily. We're already down one. They've done no damage to him. Yeah, so obviously, as you can tell, we were having a major issue with the fact that the Manticore wouldn't stay on the ground for more than like 1 or 2 seconds. So really, how are we supposed to do any kind of damage to it with our Mantis if it won't come down to the ground to fight the Mantis? So I had to come up with some sort of plan to allow the Mantis to be able to hit him. So I thought maybe I would bring all of them over to that tunnel on the side and just pack them in there, because when we did Gamma Manticore, it would fly over into the tunnel every once in a while, land, and, you know, try to do some damage to us. So I figured maybe we can just kind of pack them all in there and they'll be able to attack him when he flies in. I just didn't think it was going to go the way that it would. I don't know what to do, because he's not landing for them to fight. There he goes. Oh, he's down. But, like, he lands and then gets right back up. Look at the damage, though. Like, he's actually getting damaged pretty quickly when he does come and land. Oh my gosh, they mowed down that death worm. Don't tell me we're about to just shotgun this guy in the butt to death. This is a sad excuse for a boss fight. This is such a sad excuse for a boss fight. Oh my gosh, we're just literally shotgunning him in the butthole while our Mantis stand guard, apparently. Not the historic epic battle I was hoping for, but you know, like, take what you can get, I guess. I hate this for us. I hate this for me. Like, I hate this for me. I really do. I hate that this is how we're doing it, because I didn't want it. I wanted it to be my Mantis just go mow him down with their might of their pikes and everything. All that hard work looking for saddle BPs and stuff, all those days, those hours wanting to pull my hair out looking for saddle BPs, getting the pikes done and everything, raising those Mantis up, and we're sitting here with him stuck in a wall over them because he can't get away from them. They can't hit him, and yeah, that's just it. I'm even trying to like draw them up here to get them like up under him so that they can then hit him, but they can't. They just cannot make contact. They're not tall enough. This is pathetic. This is so pathetic. Like, I hate that this is how this is working, but at the same time, it's like, well, I can't get him with the Mantis because he won't land next to him, and then they won't stay on him well enough to you know, hit him. So here we are. Here we go. It's going down. This is so. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm letting them do the damn. Okay, never mind. We're getting rock elemental here. Oh, there it is. Beta Manticore. That is the stupidest thing that has ever happened in my, what, 9 or whatever years it's been of playing Ark. That is one of the dumbest things I've ever done. I just killed the Manticore by literally just pinning it in a corner with my Mantis and shooting it to death, while my Mantis failed miserably to attack it the entire time. Oh, I'm so ashamed that that's how that went down, but it is what it is, you know. At least we got it, I guess. So yeah, there you go. That is the Beta Manticore fight. It's very unfortunate, to be honest. That is not what I wanted to do. Obviously, I spent a lot of time raising those Mantis, getting them all geared up, and I wanted to have this unorthodox epic fight where I take it down using something that's not normally used. But of course, it didn't want to land because it's still bugged, and we just had to get it pinned in a corner and shotgun it to death. So that might not have gone how we had planned, but we still beat it, and so I added another flag to our stairs and then placed down our new trophy next to the first. I then started crafting up some more gunpowder in case we have a similar issue, and while that was going, I started farming wyvern talons as I was a few short of the required amount for doing alpha. It was taking longer than I wanted though, so I ran back to base to make up some advanced rifle bullets and returned to the cliffside where I would place down one of my turrets before getting immediately jumped and almost burned alive. In hindsight, I probably should have placed this further out in the dunes, as I didn't really have time to do any damage to the wyverns before they got in turret range. And to top things off, I very stupidly shot an alpha wyvern who would then soak every single bullet I had crafted, literally staying alive just long enough to absorb them all. So it was back to farming the normal way for the whole of day 99, eventually switching to my lightning wyvern for, well, taking down lightning wyverns. And as the night was ending, I was crafting up the primitive saddles for my Ceratos, as well as some shotgun shells, because, you know, the Manticore is broken. Day 100, and it is time to take on the Alpha Manticore. But first, I had to name my Cerato army again, with your names put to a spin wheel. We named them Dracon, Black Sabbath, Black Flash, Willow, Clarence, Latte, Ripjaw, Gauge, Watermelon, Blood Ripper, Larry, Pineapple, Quicksilver, John 117, Flaming Destruction, and Teefies. All right, guys, this is it. You're 18 years old. You're getting drafted. It's off to war for you all. And I'm just going to keep this short, guys. Good luck. You're all probably going to die. Not going to lie.
So here we go. It is time to take on Alpha Manticore. Again, we are going with just a basic strategy of letting our tames do the fighting. Only this time I only have 16 Ceratos, so our 2 best mantis will be joining the fight. I'm not gonna lie, going into this, I fully expected to just get wiped out. Trying to get alpha worthy Ceratos was a bit ambitious considering how much goes into actually taming them.
Get him, boys. Or girls, whatever you are. Nobody's moving. Nobody's moving. That's awesome. It's like they're trying. They just can't get to him because he's a bum. Get him, guys. Get him. There we go. Oh, they're getting in there. They're getting in there. They're getting in there. They're getting in there. Get him, guys. Get him. Get him. Oh, he's up. He's up. Okay, they actually did some damage, though. They actually damaged him. I don't know what kind of damage they took, but they damaged him fairly quickly. Oh, gosh. I let that one hit me. Get in there, guys. Get in there. Come on, squad. Come on, squad. They're barely doing any damage. Mantis, attack. Salads. Salads, attack. They're actually doing damage. Like, he's doing damage to them, too, but they're actually doing damage to him. Now, deathworms are up. Where's that deathworm at? I heard a deathworm. I'll take out the deathworms. You guys just keep fighting him. I got the deathworm. Oh, he's up. Dude, they actually did some damage. No way. Nope, they're not on him because he's up in the air again already. You're so annoying. Just get on the ground. Like, this is not how this fight's supposed to go. He's supposed to land occasionally. And he's just not. He will not land.
Yeah, as you can probably tell by the frustration in my voice, the Manticore went back to doing that thing where he just kind of puts his feet on the ground and then like a cat touching water, immediately springs back up into the air, refusing to land and do any actual sort of fighting. This would continue for some time as the Manticore just kept pinging me with poison shots, and eventually Entei would pass out, leaving me to scramble to jump on a Cerato and then eventually switching to a Mantis because at this point I'm just doing it for the lulz. So with the Manticore once again now not landing at all, I tried our strategy to again take it up into that tunnel, but this time the Manticore just was not cooperating.
Can you imagine, like, if they were just actually able to hit him, like if he would land and could get hit, he might already almost be dead if they could just land, they could actually get shots on him. Because they did a decent amount of damage in that first round that he came down. Trying to get him like into this pit of Ceratos, because that's the only time they've been able to like actually get him in for a second is when he goes in there after them, but now he's just focused on Entei. Oh, there goes Entei. Oh, Entei caught people on fire. I didn't know he could do that. He caught his own guys on fire.
Eventually, I would fall down into a pit of my Ceratos, which, awkwardly enough, was actually kind of a good thing.
Am I safe in this little corner? Like, they won't let him get to me? There's so many of them, he can't do anything to me. No way. This is not how this goes. This is not how we survive this and win. I'm just literally buried in my own tames. I'm just literally buried in here. This is the most cursed. Oh, this is not even funny. I'm buried in my tames. They're just literally stacked on top of me. It's like he's trying to get to the fruit in the middle of a cactus or something. I don't know if there's fruit in cactus or whatever. Water. He's trying to get to the water in the middle of the cactus. Like, that's what this is. The Alpha Manticore is trying to get to the water in the middle of the cactus. That water has a whopping Oh, I'm gonna die by heat. Oh, I stopped the heat. A whopping 1 health. Oh, I'm regaining health. This might still be a thing. As long as he doesn't get any good like jumps on me, which now I'm not buried, so that could be a thing.
Yeah, that joy and optimism that this might still be possible would be quickly crushed as on his next run, the Manticore would swoop in and take me out. So that did not go exactly as I would have hoped, but honestly, I was a bit surprised with how well our Ceratos were doing. I think they could have taken the Manticore down if it had just stayed on the ground longer than 2 seconds. Either way though, I had a lot of fun on this playthrough. We tried out a few unique ways for taking down the boss, and I think we built some pretty cool stuff. I hope you all enjoyed this adventure. If you did, don't forget to like the video, share it around, and subscribe for more. And until next time, thank you all so much for watching, and keep it crispy.